Hey everybody, welcome to the show. This is the Otherppl podcast. I'm Brad Listi here in Los Angeles. It's nice to be with you. Thank you for listening. Today's Friday, so I'm going to be doing a flashback episode, sharing an outtake from episode 244, my conversation with Hilton Als. It first aired on January 19th, 2014. Hilton Als is a Pulitzer Prize winning theater critic. He is the chief theater critic of The New Yorker magazine and the author of several books. His most recent book is a memoir entitled Pin-Up. His other books include The Women and White Girls, which was nominated for a National Book Critics Circle Award in criticism. A flashback to episode 244 is coming up momentarily. Don't forget to subscribe to this show wherever you listen. You can also subscribe on YouTube. Follow the Otherppl podcast on social media, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, and Blue Sky. If you would like to receive my free once-a-week email newsletter, you can do that over at Substack. Sign up, read it. And if you would like to join the Otherppl Patreon community, you can do that at patreon.com/otherpplpod. Help keep this show going into the future. All right, so today's flashback is from episode 244, my conversation with Hilton Als. Again, it first aired on January 19th, 2014. A reminder that the full episode is available in the feed. So if you like this flashback and you're interested in listening to the full conversation, just look for episode 244. It's there. All right, let's get to it. Let's go back in time to episode 244 and my conversation with Hilton Als.
I think when there's space, your brain opens in a very particular kind of way. You start to, I think you can see a vista or a horizon much more clearly than you can in your own gut.
Well, it's such a logical thing to say, because I was reading just this morning, I think it was on Andrew Sullivan's blog, but there was something that he was saying about architecture. He was linking to an essay about how architecture and mental health are very closely tied, or that there's a direct line of impact, which when you read that, you're like, oh, of course. And then I think about my apartment with its like 7.5 foot ceilings, and how cave-like it can sometimes seem. And it's like, I need higher ceilings. I think that would affect my.
Well, you're gonna have to go sell more ads on your podcast.
Yeah.
In order to achieve that goal, and when you do, you can have a guest room, and that invite me.
Yeah. Well, exactly. You can come on out and. But it's going to take a lot of ads. And the other thing I was going to say in the same context is that I have a friend who is he's like a web designer guy. He's technology, but he's creative. He's a coder, and he's got like kind of like an artistic soul, and he considers what he does to be art, and I wouldn't argue that. But he has this thing, because he spends so many hours in front of his computer screen, that he refuses to work on a small monitor. Like a laptop would never do. Like he's got to have a desktop with like a gigantic like 50-inch monitor, because he's convinced that like a big screen equals big ideas and a small screen equals small ideas. Which
I think that there's something to that. I think that if you can see yourself spread out in some way, language-wise or visually, it makes you feel that not so bad about taking up more space with your thoughts and heart and brain. I think it allows you to take up space, which I find very difficult to do, just because I wasn't raised to, take more than I needed.
Well, okay, and so this is kind of maybe somewhat related, but I've been reading up on you, and you write in bed. You're one of the, I guess I call them horizontal writers. Is this still the case?
Yes, I'm a completely horizontal author, but I've switched now. I'm not in bed anymore. I'm on the floor, because I feel that the hard surface contributes to a kind of monk-like severity in execution. When I'm in bed, the sentences tend to get rounder and softer, and when I'm on the floor, I'm just meaner and leaner.
Yeah, it seems like there's got to be some level of like self-punishment involved in the writing act. Like the bed is too comfortable.
Absolutely. And the thing that's great about staying at my friend's place is that I don't know how television works, so there's no real comfort. I love television. So since there's no real comfort, I'm really forced to, do the work.
Okay, so, but I've also read, and I know you don't have television where you are right now, but that you, as part of your writing ritual, because you're a morning writer, but before you get to work in the morning, you watch television, and not only do you watch television, but you watch, and I would put this in quotes, I guess, but you purposefully watch bad television.
Yes, I love cheap morning shows, and I particularly love watching the weirdness that is the Today Show now. And I also adore, and I don't think it's a cheap show, I adore Wendy Williams. I love her show. She does a lot. She doesn't do a lot for a lot of people, but she does a lot in terms of translating Black American culture to a wide audience. I think her show is fantastic. And I think the Today Show is so weird in its efforts to, be number one, that it kind of doesn't have a locus. It's a very weird show.
Yeah, I
think that, bad art can be very inspiring.
Okay, so I was going to say, let's zero in on that. Like, what does it specifically do for you to prepare you to sit down on the floor to work?
It's visual, it's verbal without being meaningful. And so the meaning, I have to supply the meaning for the day. It's not going to come from those television programs, and I think that that's fine. People are talking, but there's no deep meaning there, and so if I want to have that feeling, I have to supply it myself.
Because, I think that like a lot of writers, read before writing. They will sit down with a book that inspires them, or like they'll go back to a favorite book or something just to sort of, I don't know, get their mind working in some sort of literary capacity. And then there are other writers who can't do that. They have to kind of like roll out of bed and start writing, and then maybe they read they read afterwards to sort of take their mind off of whatever narrative they're in.
Right.
So how does reading factor in? Like, could you write after reading, or would reading mess things up?
I think the thing that I can read in the morning is poetry. It's a more spiritually disciplined art, and it has a resonance which doesn't, it's not discursive. I mean, it's emotionally discursive, but the sentences are shorter, and it's not discursive in a way like prose that would really sort of interfere with my rhythm. It can, in fact, help one find one's rhythm, but it's demanding in a different way than prose.
Yeah, and
so poetry, yes.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I find like reading poetry helps like get my brain going in a way that energizes it rather than depletes it. Not that reading prose depletes me, but there's I don't know what it is, but I've had the same experience. I think that there's something inspirational is not the right word, but it gets me going somehow.
Yes,
in ways that I clearly cannot articulate, but. To get back to you and your new book, White Girls, it's your first book in 15 years, and I'm curious. Yeah. I'm curious to know about the 15-year period. It's a fairly long spell in between books. Like, how did that unfold?
Well, I had been reluctant to do a collection, and I had been working on a book, work of fiction that kind of splintered off, and I met Dave Edgar. I think collections are not good unless you have a central idea, and I didn't have a central idea for a collection.
You didn't have a what?
So then a central idea. Central?
Oh, right, yeah.
Idea, I mean, when you think about great books of essays like The White Album by Joan Didion or Notes of a Native Son by James Baldwin, it has a real theme. The book really becomes, something that is tied together, and so I felt that I didn't have that. I met Dave Eggers, who was very encouraging about me publishing with him. And in thinking about that, I thought of, I had a joke with a friend about a book about black guys and white girls. And when the person who said that sentence said it, the white girls section of the joke jumped out at me as a unifying theme. Now, what I mean by white girls is not necessarily predetermined by race or gender, but a particular way of being in the world or admiring, quote-unquote, others in the world. So, you have Jennifer Lee in the Richard Pryor section. She married him twice. Or you'll have, Flannery O'Connor, or you'll have a female-identified Truman Capote, or you'll have Malcolm X's mother. These are people that you could categorize as white and/or female, but the stories do and do not revolve around them. I felt that if I had a distant onlooker like Jennifer, or had some distance, who had some distance on race, like Flannery O'Connor at the end of that piece, it would be a much less. I think it would be a much more. I wanted it to be a much more complex book, and putting those characters together, because I think of all of them as characters, it was kind of a chorus about visibility and marginalization, and that's why the book is called White Girls. But in terms of Black lit, we already had Black Boy by Richard Wright, and we had Tar Baby by Toni Morrison, and we had Autobiography of an Ex-Colored Man by James Weldon Johnson. And so what if we had a title that was off-center, but still dealt with certain themes?
Right. Well, and it's funny, too, because I've been reading, like in reviews that people have written about the book, or essays that people have written about the book, that a consistent thing that seems to happen is that people feel the need to describe their experience of reading the book, particularly in public, and how the title elicits a response from onlookers in ways that maybe other titles might not. I just noticed that a lot of people are like, I was on the bus and people kept looking at me, or, and someone came up to me and stopped me and asked me what the book was about, all that kind of stuff. So
wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, it happened over and over again as I was prepping. So did you have a sense, when you zeroed in on that title, that it was going to have that kind of impact, or that it would be? No,
I didn't. I really was, sort of amused by the title, but I didn't think that it was incendiary in any way. I felt that I didn't even sort of visualize what people would look like on the subway reading it, but the weird part of it is, did people ask questions when Black Boy was published, or Native Son? I think it's a very sort of interesting response. Would the book have incited people to come up to you if it said, Negro or gay colored person or whatever? Would they feel as enforced to have some sort of response?
Or white boys?
I don't know. I think even then that they wouldn't mind. They'd probably think it was about skateboarders or something.
And we will be right back. And now, back to the program. So I want to ask you about one of the essay's subjects in particular, the Andre Leon Talley essay. Is he still the creative director at Vogue? Forgive me for...
No, I'm running a magazine in Russia now.
Oh, he is. Okay. But, that essay in reviews often gets pointed to as the one that is harsh. And do you, what is your feeling on that? Was that something that surprised you?
It's very interesting, because I just got an email from Jessica Hagedorn, the great novelist, about how much she liked the book, and she said, I really don't understand why people are pointing that out, because what you're really doing is sort of talking about the world around him. And so I think that people would rather see, or there's more news value in two Black queens going at it, or one Black queen reading another Black queen, when in fact that's a real misreading of the essay. The piece was about the sort of awful world that he was in, as opposed to him, whom I adored. So the reading of it was very weird to me, and unfortunately, to some degree, I think Andre believed the audience, but I knew from a mutual friend that he liked the piece very, very much before these other people started weighing in. I wasn't attacking Andre. I loved him. I really did love him. And
has that caused personal fallout? Have you guys? Did he tell you?
He liked it a lot at first, and then he didn't. And I don't know what his situation is, but I would imagine he's very sensitive to public criticism. And I think the radical thing would have been for us to be friends, rather than him sort of deciding that, I wasn't a good person or whatever, based on what other people said, not what he really felt.
Okay, because, it's interesting.
That's what was a drag.
Yeah, well, and, you run that risk, I think, when you write about people that you know or are friendly with. I mean, when you're working in nonfiction and memoir, and this book sort of blends genres, but that's something that you have to sort of be willing to risk. And there are countless stories of writers doing that, and then, relationships suffering as a consequence. But
yeah, but, you have something like Lillian Ross's profile of Hemingway, and Hemingway writes her a letter saying, I'm completely baffled by the ways in which people are responding to your piece. I really liked it. And I think that was a smarter, realer thing for Hemingway to do than, go with public consensus. He knew what she was trying to do as a writer. It just was a very sad thing to me, because I really love Andre.
Well, he's not a writer. He's not a writer. That's an interesting distinction to make.
That's true. That's true.
He's a talented guy in his own right, but it's like, I think a writer might have more empathy with the writerly task. And, I think one of the interesting things that you said about him, and I might be, because I've been reading the book and then also been reading interviews that you've done, is that you point out like just how deft he would have to be in order to thrive in the world that he's in,
right.
How deft with people. And like, I have to admit, I don't know a ton about the world of fashion, but I am in my own way fascinated with it. Like, I saw the documentary on Anna Wintour. What was it called?
Uh-huh.
The September edition? Was that what it was called?
September issue.
The September issue, yeah. So I remember watching that, and then, finding like and is it Grace Coddington?
Yeah.
But I start to get to know these characters and finding the world very fascinating, and how it's all put together, and how like empty it can seem. From from a writerly perspective, like there's not. I mean, I think there's a lot of artistry to the world of fashion that I'm learning to better appreciate, but I don't know as a writer if it seems very different, especially in the world of like. Merchandise and commodified fashion. Do you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like just the lack.
Sure, I do. I mean, I think that you're talking about the enormous split between, the cult of personality and the cult of money. It's a very economic-driven industry in the way the art world is. And similarly, as in the art world, there's one person, there's the artist, and then there are these workers around the artist. And so there's not a lot of, it's based on a particular kind of hierarchy that really doesn't exist in the world of books, because writers don't make money. So there's no handlers, and there's no going in and out of fashion, because writing just takes a long time. So it's just a less fraught industry, book publishing and magazine publishing. But fashion is very dangerous if you don't know who you are, because so much of it is cult, and so much of it is trend. And one of the great things about Andre was that he really established a persona very, very early on, which I think helped him survive.
Well, he's such
the fashion of fashion.
Well, if I know about him, if he's reached me and he's like stuck in my memory, I mean, he's a larger than life figure. He's physically very large. He's like almost 7 feet tall, and then he's obviously the outfits and everything else, but he's really distinct. You remember him.
Yes.
So, and I heard you earlier describe, the media's assessment of that particular piece in the book, and maybe their desire to want to try to draw out some kind of conflict from it for the purposes of click through or whatever. But you described yourself as two, you and Andre as two queens going at it. When you say queen, what do you mean? Like,
I'm just saying, gay men.
Okay.
It's just a colloquialism, and we weren't going at it. I was just saying that they wanted, a lot of people who were reviewing that piece in particular wanted to position it as that. I think it's just really not in the writing. So that's why I really love Jessica Hagedorn sending me that email today. It was such a nice acknowledgement.
Well, it's nice when somebody reads you well.
Yeah.
You know, so, and,
Yeah.
you know, to go back to the 15-year period between books, you know, from the perspective of publishing and, you know, being a writer and rolling a book out into the world, did you notice distinct changes? I mean, because obviously publishing, like all the other culture industries, has gone through its changes, you know, during that period of time. But what was the difference between, you know, the last book and then this one, and you know, or were there differences, or did it feel about the same?
No, it felt different. It felt the canvas had gotten larger, and I had gotten older and more grown up. I felt that there was that one of the things I was doing that was really important with the book was really growing up in a certain way. That is, the world had become bigger, and I had become bigger in heart and mind. And so I wanted to reflect those things for sure in what I was writing, and have a bigger canvas of more characters and ideas. Yeah, I think those are the differences. And I think the first book was in a way more tentative and more, in a weird way, for me, more carefully written, because I think you're always afraid with your first thing that it's not going to be perfect.
I'm always
perfect.
I'm always afraid.
Yeah, and no book is perfect. I think I just relaxed more in this book.
All right, folks, there we go. That was Hilton Als, episode 244. The episode first aired on January 19th, 2014. You can find Hilton on the internet at hiltonals.com. You can follow him on Instagram. I gotta say, too, what was I thinking when I asked him about what two queens means? You know, it's fun to revisit these conversations, but it is sometimes painful to listen to myself. You know, you can hopefully imagine, with this many hours of myself on tape, there are certainly moments where I just, what am I thinking? And now it belongs to the ages. So anyway, thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe to this show wherever you listen to podcasts. You can follow the show on social media, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, and Blue Sky. Go subscribe to my weekly newsletter over at Substack. And if you want to help keep this show going into the future, join the Otherppl Patreon community over at patreon.com/otherpplpod. You want to do me a favor? Please give this show a rating wherever you listen. If you want an Otherppl t-shirt or a sweatshirt, just head on over to the show's official website, otherppl.com. Finally, my latest novel is out there waiting for you. It's called Be Brief and Tell Them Everything, available in trade paperback, ebook, and audiobook editions. I narrate the audiobook, so if you want to read my novel, it's called Be Brief and Tell Them Everything. Coming up on Sunday, I will be in conversation with Eliza Clark, author of the novel Penance, available now from Harper Books. Penance is the official October book club pick. So, very fascinating conversation with Eliza Clark. That is coming up in just 48 hours, not even. Stay tuned.